Lesson 93, Comparative Graphs. Make sure you have your notebook and a pencil. Write down some of these example problems, and we'll get started. All right, so for comparative graphs, there's really two types of graphs that we're going to look at. One is right here, the double bar graph. Now, if you read what it says up here for comparative graphs, those are used to display two or more sets of related data. So if you take a look at our double bar graph here in our example, it says the average daily high temperature in January and July for 5 cities is displayed in the comparative vertical bar graph below. So you have Rome, Italy, Caracas, Venezuela, Sydney, Australia, Paris, France, Tokyo, Japan. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different things are being compared here with this double bar graph. You see the light blue shows us what the temperature was like in January, and the dark blue shows what the temperature was like in July. So when we look at this graph, you can see that there's 20, 40, 60, 80 degrees on the side. And then we can kind of analyze this graph and try to think, what is it telling us? So A, in which city was the average temperature the highest? So you take a look in July. So you take a look, July, blue. Which one has the tallest? It looks like right here. That would be Rome, Italy. All right, in which city was the average temperature in January? Average high temperature. The lowest. So you take a look. January is the light blue. You want to see which one had the lowest. So I'm taking a look, and right here it looks like Harris would be the answer. C, which city had the smallest range between these temperatures? Do you know why? So the smallest range would mean that the top of the blue and the top of the light blue would be the closest. So it looks like right here. So that would be Caracas. All right, and do you know why? Why would Caracas be the smallest range? Well, it's because it's a more tropical climate, right? It doesn't get that cold in the winter, and it doesn't get super, super hot in the summer. It stays around the same temperature the whole year round. All right, and then letter D. For which city is the average January high temperature greater than the average July high temperature? How, or do you know why? So average January would be the light blue. Average July would be the dark blue. So it looks like up here we have average just under 80 degrees, and here we have just about 60 degrees. So it would be Sydney. Now, why would it be hotter in January in Sydney than it would be in July? Well, if you take a look, now we're in Google Earth. This is America, obviously, where we are. But if I type in Sydney, Australia, search, now it's going to take me over to Sydney, Australia. Okay, now that's pretty close. I'll zoom out a little bit. Sydney, Australia is in the southern hemisphere. So in the southern hemisphere, the seasons are flipped, where the winter would be like our summer, and our summer would be like their winter. So that would be why the average temperature is higher in January than in July. All right. So that's the double bar graph. Next, we're going to go on to the double line graph, which is another tool we can use to compare data. It says at the top, we can use a double line graph to show how two or more things change in relation to one another. For example, the double line graph below shows the change in population of the cities in Austin and Pittsburgh from 1950 to 2000. The legend on the right tells which line belongs to which city. So you have the blue one, which is Austin, and you have the white one, which is Pittsburgh. So taking a look, we have along the bottom, we have the years, and along the side, we have the population. Approximately what was Austin's population in 1970? He would go to 1970 here, and then you would find Austin. So Austin 1970 would be here. So approximately maybe 250,000 would be the population. B, approximately how much did Pittsburgh's population decrease between 1950 and 2000? So find 1950, Pittsburgh, and you find 2000, Pittsburgh. All right, so in 1950, Pittsburgh was sitting at 700,000. And in 2000, looks like they're sitting at about right here. Maybe they're sitting at 350,000. So the difference you would just subtract, which would give cross off. That becomes a 6. That becomes a 10. 0. So 5. So 350,000 would be the change in the population. The reason for that is, just like in social studies class that we've been learning about, there was with Carnegie Steel, that was in Pittsburgh. And so the earlier would be the more people. As time has gone on, Pittsburgh industries have changed, and so there aren't as many people. All right, lastly, you need to know how to create a double bar graph and how to create a double line graph. So this is actually part of your assignment. You have lesson practice and then the odds, but we're actually going to do the lesson practice problems together. So here's the first one. You have letter B. Actually, we'll do A first. There we go. Horizontal bar graph is what we're going to make for A. So it says that these three ladies and these three people and Manuel each wrote 2 stories. The number of paragraphs per story is shown in the table below. So we want to create a horizontal bar graph to show the scores. There should be 2 bars for each student. All right, so I'm going to kind of move this out of the way a little bit so I can have a little more space to work with. Now to make my double bar graph, that's going to be horizontal, I'm going to have it like this here, and then along the bottom I'll put the stories, 10. All right, so that would be the number of stories, and then I'll label on the left their names. So all right, now double bar graph, if I look back at my other example, I have 2 colors for each of them. So that's what I'll do here. I'll have story 1, I'll make red, and story 2, I'll choose a different color, I'll choose blue. All right, now I have it all set up, I have my legend, so then all I have left to do is just to make that double bar graph. So story 1, we have here, she had 8 for story 1, so I'm gonna go all the way up to 8. All right, and then story 2, she also had 8, so I'm gonna once again make it go all the way up to 8. All right, now Alice. Alice, story 1, she had 3, so I'm gonna have her double bar graph go up to 3, stop, come back down. Story 2, she had 6, so I'm gonna go all the way up to 6, back down. And then Terrell, story 1, he had 6, so I'm gonna have his double bar graph go up to 6. Story 2, he had 7, so I have this go all the way up to 7. And then we have Manuel. Manuel, story 1 was 7. I'll have this go all the way up to 7. And story 2, 10. So I'll have this go all the way up to 10. Now that I have my double bar graph, I could answer any types of questions I might have about it, and I can compare these two sets of data. All right, so that's the double bar graph. Next, we have the double line graph. So here's a better this version looks a lot better than mine, but that's what it should kind of look like at the end. All right, now we have the double line graph. I have a graph here just to make it a little bit easier. I can find if I look back at my example, you see population is vertical and the time is horizontal. Okay, so the first thing I need to do is to label my two people, like I had Austin and Pittsburgh. So the first thing I'll do is I will label Mia. I'll have her be green, and I'll have Lonnie be blue. All right, so now that's done. On the bottom, I'm going to put weeks, and I'm going to have it every 2 lines, I'll put a week. So week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4. Right, and then vertically, I'll also label those as the height, right? Height in centimeters. So I start at 20 centimeters all the way at 1. So I'm going to do this scale on the left by 2s. So 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 22, 24, 26, 28. All right. Now the last step is I just plot my data. So I'll start with Mia because she's the first one I had. Week 1, she was 1 centimeter. So I put a dot week 1 and 1 centimeter. Week 2, she was 5 centimeters. So I put a dot at week 2. That lines up with the 5. Week 3, she was 11 centimeters. So I have a dot at the 3 and the 11. And then week 4, 20 centimeters. Next, I do the same with Lonnie. Week 1, she was 2 centimeters. Week 2, she was 4, so I put a dot at 4 centimeters. Week 3, 10 centimeters. Week 4, 16 centimeters. And then at the end, you can draw lines to connect them. And there you have your double line graph.